Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday. On the heels of an interesting political evening last night. Definitely love the political drama. Never a dull moment in America, I tell you what. So, yesterday or the day before, it was actually the night before yesterday, I decided to shed my old business page that had a lot of information that contributed to the development of Jilly Juice. And then the last, I would say, few months is where I've really just honed in on the very specifics of why Jilly Juice is so effective, and then also point out what the holistic and the allopathic industry is doing to compound the already set issues we have in our society under the guise that they're trying to better society or better people's health. And, I have to break it down to a very, very, very simplistic thought process because there's just way too much information. And I have to bring it to a very, I would say, a macro level, because if you get down to the micro level, people get confused and they go down rabbit holes and they don't come out. And so what I'm trying to do and attempting to do to make it easy for the new business page that I have, so people can actually follow my current thought process, is to just get to the specifics so people understand the bigger picture and they understand why things exist to begin with today, and that nobody is being nefarious out there. I mean, yes, corporations want to make money. Yes, there are scam artists out there. Yes, there are nefarious people. We know that, okay? Corruption happens. It's not like we live in a perfect society. Not everybody is innocent. Not everybody is guilty. But we have to understand why things exist to begin with, acknowledge it, allow people to make the choices, and then offer them something different, an opportunity to do something better. And they still have the option to always go back to their old thought process. It's not like we're changing people where they have no choice. They still have a choice every single day. Just like people on the Jilly Juice, you have a choice every single day to stay with the Jilly Juice or not do it, okay? So, and that's all I want, is to give people the opportunity to see that there always could be a different outcome based upon your intention. And so, so my new business page, my new business page is now purely the fans or people that want to follow my information. Whether they love me or hate me, it doesn't even matter. If you hit like or you hit follow, you're interested in what I'm saying, and you've reserved the right to not let me know or let me know what your feelings are. And I'm okay with that. The last business page was based upon all of the crazy controversy as far as Dr. Phil, PewDiePie, BuzzFeed, Newsweek, Daily Mail, all those people. And those aren't true fans. Those are just people following a controversy, and they're getting, tickled by all the drama. And so I'm shedding the old drama. I mean, in a lot of ways, the new year, new me, new year, new you, whatever. I mean, that really, it makes sense. It's cliche, I know, but it's appropriate, especially coming into 2020, and we've really honed down our thought process. So I'm going to make some slides and I'm going to give them to my people so they can learn how to talk about this, so they understand why things exist, and where we came from, so we don't ever go back. See, that's the thing, is that people forget where we come from. They forget history. So they say, oh yeah, those that, don't study history or remember history are doomed to repeat it. Well, it's happening right now. We have people that don't remember history, and they're trying to eradicate biotech. They're trying to live off grid. They're trying to go back into like the wild again. And there's a reason why we don't live like the caveman. There's a reason why we don't live out in the middle of nowhere in communes with no modern medicine or good running water, because we have people who are really sick, people who, have issues and diseases, and we need to have the infrastructure to support a diverse population, or one virus will take out a whole community, a whole off-grid community. And that's why the government cracks down on those that want to go and take off on their own community, their own off-grid little commune, because they know history. And so if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it. And guess what? People are repeating the history. And so I got to remind you people, especially around the Jilly juice and of course the opportunity of indefinite life, that we came from a point in time where it was the jungle. I mean, the whole thing with the New World Order and the Georgia Guidestones, people not liking George Bush for whatever reason, George Bush Sr., and he was the one that talked about the New World Order and how it's like, you know, it's the law and order that will govern the conduct of nations, not the laws of the bush or the rules of the bush. And I, you know, as far as the sticks, you know, out there in the jungle, not the rules of the jungle that's going to govern the conduct of nations. And it now makes sense. And so this is what I need. This is who I need to reach. It's not only the conspiracy community that, yes, they were partly right in a lot of things, but also the mainstreamers who, even though they understand history, they study it, they're educated, all that. And even the alternative people, the conspiracy community are educated in some ways. But the mainstreamers also, because the mainstreamers as well as the conspiracy community still come from blinders. They still come from the blinders. They still think that the way we're going with modern medicine is the ultimate way, but they're seeing the fast approaching progressive illnesses becoming more exotic and more severe and more aggressive, and they don't know what to do. And then they start blaming each other. And this is kind of what's going on now. Now you're seeing the blame game so at its peak, and it's crazy. And you can throw a rock and hit something or someone that is going to blame their predisposition on someone or something. Okay, so this is for my new page and for new people just discovering this, because I mean, preaching to the choir all the time, it's difficult, right? So I'm always trying to reach new people and finding different ways to say stuff. And it's a challenge when there really isn't much, you know, new material, so to speak. I mean, I can go to the different diseases and go through that, but, you know, I would rather go through this information at this level in this way to then give somebody a way to create their own speech and cover the specific points. And then that's how it supports the Jilly juice in a lot of ways. Okay, so pure Darwinism. Okay, so before J juice, before modern medicine, we had pure Darwinism. Okay, and pure Darwinism is where there's no due process, there's no modern medicine to give you a stay of execution. You know, if you were reproducing on a weak body, the baby would die, or you'd have a miscarriage, and then that would be it. And that happened a lot way back, even in the kings and queens days. I mean, babies were born either deficient, handicapped, or had some kind of blood disease, or they died at childbirth. And so, you know, so only the strong survived. Okay, and you can Google all of that. So when I was studying the Liberia and the sub-Saharan desert, that's kind of like the modern day pure Darwinism that the UN and the peacekeepers and who else? Peace Corps go in and try to help the mothers understand contraception as well as understand vaccines and why they exist. So that way they can cure death with disease, yes, and the kid lives and all of that. And why they want to help these third world nations that are living in a pure Darwinism, only the strong survive, kill or be killed. Teach them that you can have an infrastructure, put in an infrastructure to help your diverse population and get education and clean water and food and all of that. Okay. So literally in Liberia, only the strong survive. They're really, I mean, they're getting a due process, but when you're out in the bush, way out there, away from more of the civilized people in Liberia, you're getting the kill or be killed. I mean, cannibalism, Satanism happens way out there in parts of Liberia that don't have a lot of structure or infrastructure. When you have these tribes, they're just eating each other and doing all these crazy traditional rituals that we don't really accept. So it is a no due process, kill or be killed, pure Darwinism, survival of the fittest. Okay, and then they're still reproducing. Okay, so when you still reproduce, only the strong will survive, the weak will not at all exist. And an example of the weak not able to handle our society is SIDS, as well as cancer, disease, and chronic illness. Okay. I mean, that's right now in Western society, that is an example of a weak person not able to survive their environment. Okay. So, anyways, that's the reason why we have infrastructure. That is where we came from, is a place like Liberia. Okay. And then we have to remember why modern medicine existed to begin with. Okay, why vaccines and modern medicine exist to begin with? Because you remember, I mean, you may not remember, but from the Bay Area, we were, it was a lot of Spanish missions. I mean, it was occupied, and Spanish explorers discovered San Francisco, Santa Barbara, all the different, missions, California missions. We learned California history when we were kids, in California schools. And so we learned about the missions and all the different Spanish explorers coming in and working with the Indians and all of that. So the Ohlone Indians is one of the main Indians that occupied the Bay Area, the peninsula over there. Okay. So they were able to live 10,000 years with, and they had a good cycle of population. They had the age-related diseases and everything, and they had their traditions, and they have their shamans. I mean, study Indian tribes and Indian history. They have their specific tribes and beliefs and all that stuff, and they work with spirits, which is their hormones, really. And so you can learn all that, but they were able to live 10,000 years, and they had clean water. No, they didn't have chemtrails. No, they didn't have GMO. No, they didn't have vaccines or 5G. I mean, it was straight up, they worked with their environment, and they worked with the fluctuations of their environment until the Spanish came onto their land and brought then pestilence and disease and weaknesses and new ways. And that's when the weak, like the elderly and the children, were then, afflicted by epidemics. Okay. And so that's no different. That's no different than Genghis Khan going in with all of his diseases and invading and causing pestilence and all that. And then wherever he invaded, they would then use their germs as weapons. And that's how Genghis Khan ultimately actually died, was the fact that he was introduced to viruses and bacteria that his body wasn't used to, and he didn't have enough antibodies and enough strength, even though, yeah, they were strong, because the way their diet and their background and what they did every day gave them the productivity and the longevity as far as the ability to invade and take over things in a very small amount of time. They were able to cover a lot of miles in a small amount of time. And that was based upon their diet of meat, milk, and eggs, and all of that. And so, but what took them down, what took the strong Genghis Khan Mongols down initially, was the introduction of pathogens. And what's a pathogen? It's a virus or a bacteria that the body is not used to and hasn't been able to transition correctly with it. And it took down him and took down a lot of his army. So that's really what takes people down, is a virus on a weak body. Now, he wasn't weak, but his system was weak. His system wasn't able to be strong enough to handle the symptoms. Okay? So why would you even get symptoms to begin with? Because you have weakness. I mean, they still were dying in Genghis Khan days. I mean, they still had age. They still had people reproducing. Okay? They had weaknesses. They were stronger relative to their counterparts, like some of the dynasties in China, but they were still weak. But the Silk Road gave way to the reasons why vaccines and modern medicine are necessary, because the Silk Road opened up these trade routes that allowed people that ordinarily would not be communing together or mixing together. They were mixing together. So you had people from the north and the south and the east and the west coming together, and they all had their different diseases and weaknesses. And then this is where then people started carrying the bacteria from people from different parts of the world and introducing it to an environment. And there are still people who are weak, because children are weak, the elderly are weak, as well as the immunocompromised. And so this is what gave way to modern medicine. This is what gave way to modern medicine, to vaccines, okay, because the smallpox vaccine was, I think, 1863. And the reason why they created that vaccine is because smallpox was the first disease that wiped out or created a major epidemic on some of these tribal nations when the Spanish came in and were saying, hey, we're here, we want to say hello and introduce ourselves. So, and so, yeah, so the Vatican, the West, then went in and started doing experiments. And they started understanding how disease happens, why it happens. And I'm telling you, there's some geniuses back then, because I don't even know how you would even introduce experimenting on trying to figure out what causes death or what causes someone to break out in a rash and all that. I mean, yeah, I guess they go and cut out that little whatever, that boil or something, put it under a microscope and look at it and see it. And I guess you take notes and you have the right equipment. But even to create the equipment, like, you know, a microscope and doing all these different things to the bodies, I'm like, oh my God, you'd have to have a really strong stomach to be able to go and do an autopsy on a body to then find out what's wrong. And they do the autopsies on these bodies that have been ravaged by disease, and they see what it looks like. So I guess, yeah, the curiosity of humans is what created the evolution of medicine and longevity, human longevity. So you really have to give credit to curiosity and innovation when it comes to the West, okay? So anyway, so Genghis Khan and the Ohlone Indians and, you know, the whole thing right now currently as far as Liberia and all these different third world nations that are trying to emulate the West, they are examples of where we came from. And if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, and we are. And so that's a really good example. So, so curing death with disease. So when you look at the infant mortality rate from the World Health Organization, that follows how many infant deaths in a third world nation as well as then in the West, then they can start seeing how vaccines and modern medicine impact a specific civilization. And when they started noticing that the Gates Foundation, who does do clean water projects and vaccines and modern medicine, they start seeing a rise or the decline of the infant mortality rate in areas where the West has come in and tried to teach, you know, contraception as well as good hygiene, as well as then introducing the vaccine campaign. But like with anything, when you cure death on a weak population that doesn't have a major infrastructure or understanding of nutrition, you're going to see disease. And when we're introducing the vaccines that we already dealt with back in the 1950s, like the polio vaccine, on bodies or kids that are going to be meeting global tourists who have all of these antibodies that are shedding in some ways. You know, we're trying to save these third world nations from major epidemics because the West goes in and we just want to go and be a tourist. And when you're a tourist, you're bringing all of your stuff. When I was a tourist in China, I was bringing all of my stuff into, you know, some of these villages. I got the yellow fever vaccine. And so, and that, you know, that gave me a layer of protection. So if I was exposed to yellow fever out there in China, I didn't completely fall, you know, but I was a little bit sick when I was out there, but I wasn't bad. So, so the whole point of the vaccine campaign is to introduce a virus into the environment that is a weakened version of it. So that way, when they do get exposed to global tourists, the tourists are not going to decimate an area. Because, you know, with the way, you know, making money and tourism and all that stuff, exploring really remote areas is become a trendy thing. And when you're exploring remote areas and you have these, you know, these women that want to, they say, oh, you know, screw America, I don't want to live in America, I want to go live in India. And, you know, they have all their vaccines and all of their stuff and they're strong, okay? But then they go into a village in India because they want to learn the culture, they want to be all like, you know, worldly, and I get it. I mean, it's popular to do that, to be a world traveler, but the World Health Organization has to protect these remote villages from those people And so they have to introduce these types of campaigns, or else, yeah, a Western woman who has all good intentions could completely decimate a population. Okay? And so, so yes, so bringing in the vaccine campaign, curing death with disease is better than not living at all. And that's kind of what's going on in our society, is that we're curing death with disease. We're still progressively becoming weaker and weaker, and kids are being created from parents' traumatized bodies, and some of them aren't able to live. I mean, I know plenty of people that had miscarriages. Okay, and when you have a miscarriage, it means that the baby wasn't strong enough to be carried to term. And so modern medicine has given us the opportunity that if you're strong enough to handle modern medicine to help you transition to the new environment, then you'll be okay. Then you do have a chance to make your life better if we know how. Okay, and so when we're introducing these vaccines, like the polio vaccine, from what we've had to deal with in the 1950s into a new population like in India, they're going to suffer the same. They've already been suffering anyways, because they either have a very high infant mortality rate or a high disease rate. And so we're trying to now soften the blow and give them a chance at life. And so then you start seeing the activists out there who are saying that the Gates Foundation is killing off an Indian community with polio, and that's not the case at all. Yes, with any vaccine that cures death and gives you disease on a body that's weak anyways, you're going to see offshoots. If you already were set by Mother Nature to die because of your weaknesses, and then modern medicine came in and manipulated your hormones and manipulated your immune system, you won't die from polio at all, but you'll have some form of it in some way if you're that weak. And so that's why we have different paralysis out there, because you have weak bodies still that have predispositions. Okay, we still have people with predispositions. I mean, there's people that have polio right now, or an effect of it where they're kind of walking with a limp. So it's in their body, and then they had children. So the children have predispositions. So, but now these specific diseases that we have vaccines for, since we did cure most, there is like an article that talks about how many deaths were actually, cured, or the decline in deaths of polio. Then you start seeing a rise of then different diseases. Okay, so when you cure death from whatever specific disease, no matter what it is, whether it's SIDS or polio or whatever, you're going to get then a disease, because it's still the body saying, hey, you're not supposed to live because you're weak, but we're going to give you a stay of execution, so we'll still affect you in a different way, which is there's still going to be weaknesses, and the body still wants to live, and you've kind of manipulated it, but you haven't earned the full capacity of your body. So you're going to be, we're going to give you deficiencies that you're going to figure out how to work with them. And then society will then test you to figure out what would be a suitable job for you. So yeah, you're not going to be some, truck driver if you have certain paralysis in your body. Okay, you'll go to college and be an engineer, and then you'll work with your mind, or you'll be like a Stephen Hawking, or you'll be like, some Olympian. Either way, you work with your strengths, and then you deal with your weaknesses. And that's our society. And that's our society dealing with predisposition. Okay? So, so curing death with disease with vaccines and modern medicine, polio vaccines eradicate polio deaths, but offshoots of polio virus mutated on weak bodies anyways. Also known as predisposition, all originated from Europe, the Vatican. And the Vatican really saved people. They have so much information. People are like, oh, they're so satanic. Well, they're just, trying to explain to people about life and death. And there's a lot of death out there because there's a lot of people that reach the end times of their life, and this is how they express themselves. And then when somebody is giving you life, and then also when there is an imbalance, death happens, the Vatican and anyone else that gives life as well as then you think is causing you death, there you have that weird dichotomy of people who are like, oh, pro-life and then pro-death, or talk about how horrible the Vatican is. And no, they have contributed to a huge population of 7 billion people. Okay. And yes, they have a lot of money in the Vatican. You're absolutely right. And they have their own issues too. Yes, they're not immune to the craziness as far as the reproductive system and how that kind of manifests itself when it's cattywampus. Okay. So nowadays, now we bring it to present day, blaming your predisposition on the act, which is basically on all these activist platforms, is how you blame your predisposition. And it's become a multi-billion-dollar industry. And that's now where I'm kind of picking up, because I came into this world from Vietnam. So I was saved by the vaccines and by all this stuff, by modern medicine, by America, because I probably was set to die in the orphanage. Most orphans in third world countries through war-torn nations don't survive. So the fact that I was able to survive, totally lucky. So I'm in this world already, and I don't really know too much about history. And I go to school for a few years, okay, but I don't see the bigger picture, because there's no way to see the bigger picture. You only have 12 years of school, and you got to learn so much. I mean, yeah, you can go to college, which I did, but the college still doesn't give you the bigger picture, okay? Because there's specific specialties, and you have to have some kind of life experience to put it all together. So luckily, I have enough life experience to understand all different segments of society and cultures. And now I'm able to express now my perspective based upon my experiences. And so, yes, I did spend time in the conspiracy world, in the holistic world, in the alternative mainstream media world, because I needed to get a different perspective. Because I knew I was progressively becoming worse with my own disease or my own issue. And so I had to do something, because my will to live is so strong that I couldn't see myself just, giving up and letting my disease ruin my marriage and ruin my life. I had to do something. And so, but I had to peel back the layers of programming, as far as, because I brainwashed myself. When you've been told your whole life that, you need to do all these things, and you need to fit into society in this way, and you really can't because you have all these issues. And then you then are told by somebody who gives you a different thought process that this is whose fault it is. It's the vaccines, it's Monsanto, it's the 5G, it's the chemtrails, all these people's faults, and the food industry and the chemicals and all of this stuff. And then you start then kind of like thinking in a different way, and start realizing that, oh my God, I have all this disease, and the outcome is the intention. What the hell? Da, da, da. And so then you fall, and then I brainwash myself by falling into groups who are in that blame game. And so I was in those worlds for a few years, and pulling myself out of those worlds was I couldn't do it by myself. The Jilly juice actually helped me pull myself out of the conspiracy world, out of the holistic world. Obviously, I was out of the allopathic world, because nothing that I saw with prescription drugs offered me any kind of relief. If anything, it made things worse for me, but it's not like they didn't have a benefit in the beginning of my life, but they did not have a benefit in the middle of my life. And so that's where I was struggling with the balance of understanding why modern medicine exists to begin with, because I was towards the end of what I thought was the end of my life. So that's why I got into the conspiracy world and the holistic world. So now today, as I'm getting out of the conspiracy world, out of the anti-vax world, out of all that, I see now that predisposition is what everybody has, and the multi-billion-dollar industry is blaming your predisposition on everything and their mother. Vaccines, Monsanto, all of that. So Monsanto, so here we go. Blaming your predisposition on the activist platform of the day has become a multi-billion-dollar industry. For example, Monsanto, vaccines, biotechnology, prescription drugs, cannabis, illicit drugs, GMO, meat, 5G, milk, wheat, processed foods, fluoride, minerals, fat, acid, hormones, food, drink, water, earth, your environment, your government, your mom and your dad, your neighbors, the US government, Russia, China, all are being blamed for your cancer, disease, chronic illness, aging, and autoimmunity, as far as when you trigger your predisposition. So now I am reintroducing a lot of things. First of all, your predisposition is not based upon all these things that people are blaming right now. Predisposition is based upon the traditions of families. When you think about predisposition, it's based upon the family's tradition of compounding the weaknesses through reproduction without taking care of the root cause properly and effectively. Okay? And so those in specific industries that sell you something as a remedy or a detox or a pill, powder, or supplement will use the most current activist platform of the day. So then I'm saying time to break the chain of tradition of predisposition and then falling victim to the blame game du jour. So the state of our current society as it stands today when dealing with predisposition with the wrong chemistry. So the state of our society today is dealing with your predispositions with the wrong chemistry, with the improper intention, which is to mitigate pain, okay? And then why it contributes to the acceleration of the death trajectory, and then why indefinite life has never been explored. So yes, so the whole point of our society is to stop the pain, is to take things to stop the pain, take a drug, a pill, power supplement, detox, whatever, playing with your hormones, playing with crystals, all of that, taking, whatever to stop the pain. And it is then made up of different conglomerations of fatty acids, amino acids, prohormones, and minerals, and that's what your body is made up of. But you have so many different imbalances that there's no way you're able to really balance it correctly with the methodologies that are out there. And so every single therapy that is being used out there is actually compounding the problem, making the situation worse. And then people are still having babies and still doing whatever they do, thinking that Pandora's box, is going to be closed. No, they keep creating a Pandora's box every single time they don't take care of the root cause. And so there are like 10 different diseases that people get triggered by and then ultimately die from. And that I need to read that. I'm not gonna read it, but I'm gonna just kind of list out, because all of those specific, because basically these are all predispositions. When you think about predisposition, it's everything that you're dealing with right now and what your parents have dealt with, okay, and are dealing with. So the top deadliest diseases in this world, and it's loading. It's taking forever. Okay. So let's see. I mean, you already know some of this, but I want to go over it again because this is for my business, my new business page. So number one is the ischemic heart disease or coronary heart disease. And that has to do with too much fatty acid. So your body is made up of fatty acid imbalances. Your body is made up of fatty acid, amino acid, prohormones, and minerals. And when you are triggering heart disease, or when you have heart disease in your family, or you create that predisposition in your current life, so maybe it's not in your family, but you create that predisposition based upon other issues in your body that you've used certain therapies that then create that predisposition, then you start seeing an imbalance in your fatty acids, amino acids, prohormones, and minerals. And what happens is that you have stagnated your system to give you autophagy deficits. And autophagy is where the body is able to release the excess and break down and dissolve the negatively mutated cells and then release them from the body. What happens is that people have stagnated their autophagic processes, and so they're holding within them all these mutated cells that are also multiplying, okay? But also too, there's so much plaque and so much antigen, which is excess of fatty acid, amino acids, prohormones, and minerals, that they start clogging up the arteries and the capillaries, and that's when strokes and heart disease and heart attacks happen, okay? And so this is why even with people with autoimmune disorders, they progressively then trigger a heart attack. Because let's say you have lupus, okay, or Raynaud's disease. When you have circulatory issues, or you have lupus where you have autoimmunity, where your body is creating antibodies, and then those antibodies attack your organs, but that's also clogging up your blood, clogging up your arteries and capillaries. So not only fatty acids and amino acids and all that clog up your blood vessels, but antibodies. Because when you get the wrong blood transfusion, if you're O negative and you're getting AB positive blood, then you have antibodies being created, it thickens up the blood, and that's when people get strokes and heart attacks. It's the same thing. The blood needs to be moving freely. It needs to have the right balance of electrolytes, of salt, of water, of minerals to keep everything moving like a nice moving highway. And when people are so stagnated in their body processes, that's where heart disease and heart attacks is the number one death. Number one way people die as well as a disease, okay? And it makes sense. Okay, so anyway, they have like all these remedies for it, but I'm not going there. And then number two is strokes. Strokes, the same thing. When you not get enough blood to your brain because you have stagnated your immune system and your excretory processes, where you're not releasing the excess and your blood is getting too thick and it's not making its way to your brain, that's when strokes happen. Okay, blocks and leaks, or you have so much fat in the in your blood vessels that it bursts the blood vessels, or you have cardiomyopathy type of thing, where you have the muscle in your heart is so big that it stops the blood supply too. Okay, but anyways, that's, you know, the strokes. And then lower respiratory infections. Okay, so I mean, when you have Parkinson's and then you get pneumonia, and then you're not able to release the mucus, and then the you know, people die, you know, people that die when they have Parkinson's because of pneumonia, because there's no more air able to get through that horrible blocked passageway of your respiratory system. So so viruses on a weak body cause lower respiratory infections. See, infection happens when infections happen when the body doesn't have enough of the minerals and the nutrition to heal itself properly and expeditiously to where you don't get infection. Okay, I haven't had an infection in a long ass. I haven't had an infection since 2018. The last, you know, flu bug I had was back right after I came back from Dr. Phil in March or April of 2018. Okay, so that says something, that my body is strong enough to be able to handle my environment and handle the adaptation changes through the different seasons. Okay, so when you get symptoms because of you're coming from summer to fall to then winter, that's the body weak that is still exposed to viruses that will then start getting symptoms. So when you're asymptomatic, not taking drugs or colloidal silver or holistic remedies, but when you are asymptomatic and you're strong and you reverse all your issues, you're not going to get infection. Infection only happens when the body is that weak. And so then they have to turn to antibiotics to stop the pain, to stop the bleeding, to stop this or whatever, not stop the bleeding, but to stop the pain, to stop the infection. And then they bandage it and then you know, force the body to then steal nutrients and minerals from other parts of the body. And so that's how people are able to heal from infection, but that's, you're still coming from a deficit. The fact that you have infection to begin with says that you have issues and imbalances. Okay, so and then, oh yeah, number 4 is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. So it's like, yeah, long progressive lung disease that makes breathing difficult, like bronchitis and COPD. See, the whole thing with the J juice is with these specific issues, like with heart disease, okay, and strokes and all of that, those are all symptoms from predisposition. Those are weaknesses in your cardiovascular system, in your blood, and all that. Those are also deficiencies that you have in your body already. And so when you get strokes or heart attacks, it's the body warning you that if you don't do something different, like change your diet, and what they recommended is that you do exercise, or you stop eating high fat, high fats. And avoidance game, or in taking on exercise, is one way to manage your symptoms. It's one way to manipulate your body in some way to prolong your life, but it still doesn't get to the root cause. You're still not strengthening that weakness. And so the inevitable is going to happen. It's just not going to happen right then and there, God willing. Okay. And so, yeah, when people get their first heart attack or their first stroke, they flip out and their life changes. And they start eating better. They start exercising. But still, when you have a good balance of your fatty acid, amino acid, prohormones, and minerals, you don't need to turn to exercise. You don't need to avoid fat. When you're bringing in the right chemistry to induce autophagy without taking in an excess amount of minerals and other stuff, you don't have to play the games that they play in as far as the allopathic holistic world. But the fact that you already have all these imbalances, you're going to go and try to overcompensate. Okay. And so that's kind of why the end result's always going to be the same. So hold on a second. Somebody is saying something, but I don't know who. All right. Is there a comment? I can't see. All right. See more. Okay. See less. Okay. Well, anyways. I don't see any comment, but I thought there was a comment, but I guess there's not. All right. So anyways. All right. So let's see. So that's number 4 is a COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And the J juice with all of these is going to give you the minerals and the energy and the nutrition to repair the weakness, and then to give you the juice in your blood so you can keep that highway of oxygen and minerals and nutrients going to all the proper places, especially your vital organs. Okay. So then you have number 5 of the top 10 diseases is trachea, bronchus, and lung cancers. And cancer is virus that's on a weak part of your body. That's all cancer is. It's a virus on parts of your weak body. And so people have respiratory weaknesses that were either incurred in their lifetime through the therapies they were doing for something else, and then they systematically were weakening their lungs, which then gave way to then lung cancer. Because there are people that smoke that don't get lung cancer. Okay? And there are people that don't smoke get lung cancer. So where does this lung cancer come from? It comes from a weakness. Now, there are contributing factors to contribute to the weakness of it. When you're smoking and you already have weaknesses in your lungs, and cigarettes have minerals, okay, then you're creating mineral imbalances that will then cause more weaknesses, which will then allow then the viruses to then recycle you back to Earth, which then triggers all these crazy cancers. Okay, so lung cancer comes from a predisposition or an incurred situation in your lifetime. Diabetes mellitus. So diabetes is a group of diseases that affect insulin production, so affects your hormones. You have hormone imbalances. In type 1 diabetes, the pancreas can't produce insulin. The cause isn't known. It's weaknesses in the pancreas and the digestive system, all of that, and the hormones. Okay, the endocrine system. And then in type 2 diabetes, the pancreas doesn't produce enough insulin, or insulin can't be used effectively. And so type 2 diabetes can be in adult onset, which includes, well, yes, it's genetic, as well as then, traditions as far as just what you practice, poor diet, lack of exercise, and being overweight. But even when you exercise and then you change your diet, and and you're not as overweight, you lose weight, you still have the weakness. And then what you're doing is creating more weaknesses with the overcompensation, trying to change and manage that symptom. You create new symptoms, or you create new weaknesses that will turn into new symptoms. Okay, because I know some people that are like, hey, I got diabetes and I want to go and work out and I need to go lift weights, and that right there will then cause more weaknesses, because lifting weights and doing that kind of stuff could, trigger a heart attack if you already create a predisposition, or if that's in your family. Okay, so with the way in which allopathic holistic industry manages disease and cancer and all of that, they create more cancer and disease. Okay, so and then number 7 is Alzheimer's and other dementias. So when you're not releasing the excess, Lewy bodies. Lewy body is a type of protein. It's the neuron proteins. At the end of these neuron receptors, there's these proteins that aren't released properly, and they gather in the brain. And then some of those trigger Parkinson's, as well as other dementia type of diseases. And so when you don't have the proper autophagy based upon lifestyle, belief system, and all of that, and then you also have a predisposition, Alzheimer's and other type of dementias do set in and trigger. Okay, and so that's when the body stays, but the body and the spirit stays, but the mind goes. And that's hard to deal with when you have people in your family that you love that don't remember who you are. And then they have to be watched on a continuous basis. And that's a lot of pressure to put on any family member. Okay. So, yeah. So I'm not going to say the risk factors, because you already know predisposition, and then, you could be creating predisposition as you speak, because all the therapies out there trigger other new predispositions. And that's why you're seeing kids with so much issues, because the parents have not corrected their parents' predisposition, and they create new ones they don't even know about. Okay. So number 8 is dehydration due to diarrheal disease. Okay. So this is when children and people who have been, living in an area with poor sanitary conditions, no access to clean water, age, with children being the most likely to experience severe symptoms of diarrheal disease, malnourishment, a weakened immune system. Okay, so those are in areas in third world countries, like let's say even like in what is it? I forget what the name of that place where they had Katrina. Well, no, not there. Well, yeah, some of these hurricane ravaged areas and islands where the sanitation and all of that, like their whole infrastructure was damaged. And so, yeah, you get like Giardia, and you get E. coli and all of those different diseases from lack of clean water. Even parts of India, the Ganges River, where people are bathing and pooping and all of that, and there's dead bodies floating down the Ganges, and then people are, bathing and drinking and all of that. In Mexico, you have all the, the Montezuma's revenge. And so when you are exposed to a pathogen like E. coli, okay, like these bacterias, and your body is weak already, so you don't have enough of the good bacteria in your body to fight off that exposure, then the body goes and steals resources like your electrolytes and the water in the body, and that's when they push out the bacteria. So that is a dehydrative diarrhea. But people try to liken my stuff to this, and it's not a comparison, because there's nothing pathogenic in the J juice. It's all probiotic, and you're bringing in electrolytes. You're not stealing electrolytes from your body to take out any bad stuff. You have bad stuff in your body that you're harboring because of autophagy deficits or autophagic deficits. And then the J juice induces autophagy because of the salt and the electrolytes and the water and the probiotics and the nutrients, and it's taking out everything that is causing and compromising your body, and also releasing the predispositions that you inherited from your parents that could potentially trigger at some point. Okay, so anyway, so that, yeah, so in areas such as third world countries where they don't have clean water, dehydrative diarrheal diseases is another factor in why people die. Okay, and then number 9 is tuberculosis. It's a lung condition caused by bacteria called Mycobacterium. It's an airborne disease. And risk factors, I guess, is diabetes, HIV infection, lower body weight, regular use of medications so that suppress the immune system. So yeah, I mean, tuberculosis is really where your body is that weak and that compromised, and your immune system is not working effectively for you. And then you get exposed to a bacteria that's in your environment. You can't get away from it. And so then tuberculosis is then one of the big factors of why people die. So number 10, the last disease of why people die, is cirrhosis of the liver. Cirrhosis is a result of chronic long-term scarring of and damage to the liver, and caused by hepatitis and chronic alcoholism. So those of you that are chronic drinkers, chronic alcohol use, fat accumulation around the liver, chronic viral hepatitis, risk that. Okay, and that's why the J juice, you know, will help you calm down your cravings for things like alcohol, and will help balance out your fatty acids, your amino acids, prohormones, and minerals. And so right now in our society, death, disease, and reproduction is kind of like our life. And so, you know, a very prolonged death process is called life in our society. And so fatty acids, amino acids, prohormones, and minerals is what makes up all of biodiversity. Okay, so our environment and animals and plants and insects and humans are all made up of fatty acid, amino acids, prohormones, and minerals. And then pain is the genesis of healing right now in our society, but people don't know that. And so they're trying to mitigate pain. And so what happens, so how pain really should be characterized, pain is the trigger of either imminent life or imminent death. Okay, and pain will happen at conception, at birth, delivering a baby, and then growing up. And then also pain is then a sign of imminent death too, because you know the body wants to live, and people are trying to mitigate pain, and then the body takes its last breath, and that's where a heart attack or stroke could happen, or a person couldn't survive it because they have no more minerals and nutrients left. Okay, and so so pain also is biochemical triage. Okay, which means that when you are suffering from malabsorption, which is from an overabundance of fungus and acids in the body that are then causing and punching holes in your gut to then cause you not to absorb the proper amounts of nutrients and minerals, then the body will then steal resources from different parts of the body to make sure their vital organs are going. So that's why you're seeing when people age, you're seeing the gray, white hair in their beard, because those are minerals being leached to take care of the vital organs, or why you see collagen disappear off the face when women are getting older. Okay, so so malabsorption is one of the biggest reasons why chronic pain happens, which is biochemical triage, where the body steals Peter to pay Paul type of thing. And so, you know, what cancer, disease, and chronic illness is in aging autoimmunity is obviously viruses and bacteria on a weak body that affects the 11 different systems. And that is the circulatory system, the urinary tract system, the endocrine system, the digestive system, the male and female reproductive system, the nervous system, the skeletal system, the respiratory system, the integumentary system, the lymphatic system, and the muscular system. Okay? And so you're going to have all these different cancers and diseases, a conglomeration of all these different systems that are affected. And so the way our society is where you are adapting, then you get disease and you get mucus, then you get pain, and then you adapt and you get disease and mucus and pain, and then you also apply the wrong chemistry to the body, which then triggers more trauma to the body. That's why I say that you could be dealing with predisposition and then creating predisposition through the methodologies used to manage your cancer, disease, and chronic illness. And so more imbalances happen, and then why a person actually dies would be either a sudden cardiac arrest or a stroke because you have nothing left. When your body is when your blood's trying to pump a certain amount, per minute to your brain or your heart, and then it lowers, that's when the body kind of goes into a defibrillation type of thing and tries to pull the electrolytes, and that's where strokes and heart attacks come from. It's like a natural defibrillator. But if you don't have enough nutrients and no oomph left in your blood to pass through the fatty deposits and all of that, or the antibodies, then you don't survive the heart attack or the stroke. You don't survive the defibrillation. Because you know that people that get the defibrillator used on you and the person doesn't come back to life. When they do those, goes like 1, 2, 3, pa-chung, 1, 2, 3, pa-chung, and it doesn't work, it means the person is too far gone. When a person gets the defibrillator, like 1, 2, 3, pa-chung, 1, 2, 3, pa-chung, and then they live, then it means they had enough nutrients to keep them going. Okay, so if you can live through a heart attack and a stroke, you have enough stuff in your body, but you better be changing your ways and bringing in some nutrition, because you may not survive the next thing. Okay, so with the whole thing with the J juice is that you're in the J juice life loop. So I just spoke to you about the death loop. J juice is the most perfect food with the ability to harness the elements in a proper chemistry, working synergistically with the biochemistry in the human body. Okay, and so you're always on a life loop with Jilly juice. So Jilly juice is cabbage and kale and water and pink salt that's fermented, and you're getting with the protocol, because it's also with the diet, the temporary diet. So you're getting a very good balance of fatty acid, amino acids, prohormones, and minerals in a synergistic chemistry form that then works and aligned with the biochemistry. And then you actually tap into the intelligence of the body. When you tap into the intelligence of the body will then release what it doesn't need, as well as take out the stuff that's impacting or compacted, and it absorbs what it needs to then go in and fix the priority issues in the body. So that's why when you do the Jilly juice, I can't tell you if your current symptoms that you're dealing with are going to be addressed right away. It might not. You may not have your specific issue that you want addressed, right away. It may not happen until like 2 years later, because there's other things, other priorities in the body, other predispositions and traumas that the body has to deal with first. So that's why you don't go into this Jilly juice protocol trying to manage your specific symptom, which I've had people do, where they go into it because they have an abscess in their mouth and they think the J juice is going to just disappear it, thinking that the Jilly juice is going to say, okay, I know what you're thinking. You want me to fix your abscess. And it does, but I'm making it bigger, and all of these white blood cells are making it swell, and then it's painful, yes, and eventually it does pop and burst, and then all those white blood cells do drain. But then there's other issues that also happen during that process, because everything is connected. So this person was freaking the hell out thinking that I was hurting them, when in actuality it did exactly what it was meant to do. It took care of the infection, and yeah, it was painful. And then there was other issues in the face that he wasn't prepared to deal with. But he had so many issues from predisposition that you can't possibly control the healing process with the J juice. You can kind of control the severity by taking a little bit here and there, but eventually you're going to have to deal with some of your issues. And it's going to be severe for some of you. Okay? So that's why we don't tell you what the J juice can do for you. You tell us what it's doing for you, because there's no way we can predict how the body is going to deal with the priorities, because you are the only one that knows, well, not even knows, you're the one that knows your own predispositions to what you know, and you're the one that has lived your life. There are things that you probably don't share to people of traumas that you've experienced that may come up. So there's no way that the Jilly Juice crowd can tell you what to expect. We'll give you a certain kind of like overall, okay, waterfalls, yeah, you'll get a headache. We'll give you, like, we have all these lists of like symptoms that you possibly could be triggering, but not everybody experiences all these symptoms. But these are people experience because there's so many different diseases and weaknesses in parts of the body that, I mean, I never experienced throwing up, but some people have. Okay, so it all depends on what it is that you've dealt with before, your predisposition. So with the whole J juice is that you can do it with prescription drugs and implants. And then you're always going to be bringing up the prostaglandin hormone, which is the pain sensation. And then you'll do the protocol diet, and then you'll get mucus. Okay, you'll be getting mucus a lot because the body's releasing. And then you'll reintroduce foods way down the road, and you'll see if your body can handle the food supply, which you should be able to. And if you have a lot of mucus, it means you still have imbalances. So you need to stay away from those foods and stick to the diet until your body is balanced out. And then when your body is balanced out, you should be able to eat the same food without getting crazy amounts of mucus. But when you do get mucus when you eat food, it means that the body is self-regulating without you trying to drive the process. Okay. And so the whole thing with the J juice is adaptation, because you're going to go from summer to fall to winter. And I live in an extreme climate area, so I'm feeling every single season change. My dog definitely feels it. She goes through her adaptation change. And I get very minimal symptoms, if at all. If anything, I sleep more, maybe have a bit more mucus waking up in the morning to go, because I'm going through that change. And that's it. I don't have any flus or bugs or anything like that. No headaches. I mean, I may have a headache here and there, but not really. But that's only during that adaptation change. And so the sign of a very strong body is where you don't feel any kind of, I mean, if you don't feel any crazy symptoms that would then warrant you to go take something for it. But no matter what, anytime you go from one environment to another, your body has to adjust. And how aggressive that adjustment, that evolution process is based upon how strong or how weak you are. Okay, so you're always going to go through with the J juice an adaptation. You have mucus, depending upon what's going on, as well as reversal of whatever issue that you may have encountered. And it just keeps looping. Adaptation, mucus, reversal, because you're always changing environments from going inside to outside, to one situation to another, one environment to another. The sign of indefinite life is the ability to adapt to any situation indefinitely without triggering the death process, without triggering adrenaline, without triggering the sex hormones, without triggering things that would cause a person to get on that death trajectory. And you see those out there that trigger the death trajectory because they're dealing with cancer, disease, chronic illness, and they're chasing tail left and right, and they want to have a baby. I mean, those are the signs that someone's on a death trajectory when their biological clock is ticking on a continuous basis, even if their intention is not to actually procreate. That's a sign of a person on a death trajectory. So when you do the J juice, you're going to see a calming of your hormones in so many different ways. So, I mean, that's kind of the long of the short of it. I mean, I guess. I mean, I could probably go for hours and days on all of this information on on autophagy with the waterfalls and the poop, why it is like they call us a poop cult, because that's the key to why people have issues, because they're full of SHIT and they don't want to admit it. And you could be skinny and be full of SHIT, okay? You don't have to be obese to be full of SHIT. So it'd be worth those of you that are exploring my information to even do a little bit. Even do a little bit. Because a little can go a long way. And then when you feel more comfortable, you'll keep increasing your intake of cabbage, water, and cabbage and water and salt, fermented cabbage and kale and all that. So, I mean, do both the cabbage and kale, because kale has tremendous amounts of nutrients. Never, ever just only do cabbage or only do kale. Do both. They both have different types of minerals and nutrients that your body needs. Because when I just started off with cabbage and then I did the kale, oh my God, that was a whole nother level of healing. Okay, so chase after life, you guys. I'm telling you, life is precious. Life is precious. And your God, which is life, doesn't want you to be recycled back into the universe, suffering on your way out. Your God wants you to live, not just in spirit, floating around, looking for a body to inhabit. Your God wants you to live. Life is precious. And that's all I'm going to say today. Bye.